Tonight, both Green Lantern and the Flash realize that their greatest enemies are themselves, both metaphorically and literally. Batwoman gives us the finale 6 months in the making, and boy howdy was it not worth the time. And New 52 Future's End gives us so many mechanical spiders you'd think that Will Smith was about to write a song about it. All that and more tonight on the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 139 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and it's a 5th week. Hooray, huzzah, we did it again. I will explain what that means to any newbies in the audience in just a minute, but I did want to just put out this beforehand because it's already going to be a little bit of a shorter episode, I think. So I can go ahead and just talk for a second here. I finally feel like we were out of the planning phase. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it's pretty common knowledge that when New 52 began, they planned up to and including Forever Evil. They got that far. They had the whole roadmap put out there and they said, yep, this is what we're working to. And now that we're past Forever Evil, I mean, we're still waiting on issue 7. For God's sakes, Jeff Johns, get a scheduler. But now that we are technically past Forever Evil, I feel the cracks. Like, it's only been like a month, maybe 2, depending on how you count. But, like, I already feel like things feel less cohesive. I feel like it's starting to move into, okay, now we're kind of scrambling for what it is we're trying to do next. And it doesn't feel like there's as much of a guided vision. Mind you, there was never a guided vision, but it feels even less so now. So, yeah, I just want to put that out there. This is the first week that, like, really looking at it, I don't feel that connective tissue that I felt for the first 138 episodes of this show. So, yeah, I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's going to continue, probably. But, yeah, it's just one of those feelings I had to share. Always share your feelings, kids. It's very important. Anyway, for those of you who are new to this show, hi. It is customary to leave a thumbs up on whatever platform it is you're watching or listening to this through. But let me explain what a 5th week is. A 5th week is a week where DC Comics says, well, golly gee, most months only have 4 weeks, and we plan around that. What are we supposed to do for this weird-ass 5th week that's shown up? We got a 5th Wednesday. And so they decided, hey, we're just going to put out a bunch of annuals. And now that they've started weeklies, weekly comics as well. So those are all coming out on 5th weeks. And those are the things I will be dealing with in this episode. But additionally, comics come occasionally with things called backup stories, which are stories that the writers said, this doesn't deserve a full issue. So just throw it at the back of another issue. I will be talking about those as well. Mind you, there are not a lot. There is a severe dearth of backup issues in terms of what I usually deal with, but those will be at the end of the episode. For now, though, why don't I tell you the comics that are coming out this week that we're going to be talking about? So, we have a couple of annuals, those including Batgirl, Batwoman, Green Lantern, New Guardians, and The Flash. We have 2 weeklies, the first of which being Batman Eternal, which has been going on for the past month. But also, we get the 0 issue, which is technically a free comic book day issue, of Future's End, officially titled New 52 Future's End. But that's stupid, so I'm just going to call it Future's End. So Future's End number 0 is also out this week. But then on top of all of that, we have a special as well, which is a wrap-up to the Forever Evil Arkham War series titled Forever Evil Aftermath Batman vs. Bane, number 1, which, Jesus Christ, get your subtitles together, DC. That is just a bit too much. Anyway, all that's coming out. We will be sure to get through all of it, hopefully within a reasonable amount of time. I'll be honest, this week, because of the only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 comics, and then however many backup stories, because I'm trying not to spoil that, I didn't set a timer. I don't know how long I talked for, and I'm not going to know until I threw the edit in. So, for all I know, this is a 3-hour episode. I doubt it. I highly doubt it. But this might be. But either way, I think I've wasted a sufficient amount of your time. Let's go ahead and jump right on into, I guess we'll start with Future's End. Future's End number 0, written by Azzarello, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen. Art by a whole bunch of people on this first issue. We got Van Sciver, Zurcher, Lopresti, Jurgens, and Marino. So this is a free comic book day issue to kick off the Future's End weekly event, mini, whatever you want to call it. It's kicking it off. It is required reading, though. You can't skip the 0 issue and just hope to get around to it. So, beginning, we start in Central City 35 years from now. We see the moon has a giant Brother Eye symbol on it, and immediately we see down beneath Central City, there's like a vaulted door that is being kept open by Captain Cold saying, oh, he's coming, just give him some more time. And as they're about to close the door to keep the quote-unquote bugs out, Flash runs in. And he's got like a full beard and everything, and as Flash comes in, he's just like, oh, I'm so sorry, I was running all night. I couldn't find anybody else. Like, there's nothing. But don't worry, there's only a couple tiny bugs outside. No big hitters. And then all of a sudden, the alarms start going off. And we see some big bugs come in. Apparently, they followed Flash. And the bugs are superheroes and villains that have been taken over by Brother Eye and turned into horrific techno cyborg monsters. So coming in, busting down the wall is Wonder Woman and Hawk, who are both giant spider creatures. So they see, hey, there are people who are not assimilated. Some of them are superheroes. Let's go get them. And Flash and Captain Cold start fighting against them. One of the other guys, I'm not sure who it is, gets attacked by Wonder Woman. Flash tries throwing a couple punches at Hawk. It seems to distract him, but then Wonder Woman cuts off Captain Cold's hands, to which that's enough for him to start assimilating. Flash comes in and starts beating the ever-loving crap out of Wonder Woman's body. It seems like he's successful, but then a whole bunch more bugs show up and they start swarming around Flash. But before they can get to him, Frankenstein steps in, who has an arm that looks like it belongs to Hawkman, if I'm correct. He's like, hey, Flash, you were a friend of mine. I'm going to let you, like, join freely. That's the benefit here. And he's like, screw you, Frankenstein, you joined the wrong side. And he's like, oh, well, I can do this the hard way, too. And he opens up his shirt, and grafted onto Frankenstein's chest is the head of Black Canary. And Flash is just like, what in the hell is that? And he's just like, oh yeah, it's Black Canary, check this out. And he makes her do the canary cry strong enough to just completely decimate Flash's body. So we get a few glimpses around the world. Atlantis, London, Gotham, Paradise Island, all of them have been taken over by Brother Eye cyborgs. He seems to really have a thing for a spider aesthetic. And finally, we cut over to the sewers of Metropolis, where Blue Beetle, Jaime Reyes, and John Stewart, Green Lantern, are running down, and they're like, all right, we're here to act as a diversion while Grifter and Amethyst take out the battery source of Brother Eye, which is apparently Firestorm. And Blue Beetle's like, yeah, all right, I'm ready. I just wish we weren't the diversion. So they come up, they start distracting, I think it's a Mazo and Booster Gold, who immediately lock onto them. They attack Jaime, and he's just gone. He's out. He's assimilated. John does a little bit better at holding them off, but then he hears a voice behind him, and he sees that Superman is there. And he fires a laser cannon over at John, and John's like, oh, you aren't Superman. Superman's dead. And the Superman robot attacks John and starts assimilating him, and that's that. So then we cut over to Grifter and Amethyst, and they are outside of where the battery is, and they're like, they did their job well, they knew the risks, we just have to hold up our part now. So they make a little pact, they say, we're humanity's last hope, let's get in there, let's not let them die in vain. So Amethyst opens up the portal, and as she does so, they are immediately blasted by green energy to the point where their faces are freaking melting off. And we see, oh wait, John, he turned faster than we thought, and him and Superman are here. We can't do anything. So they call over the comm or something like that to whoever's there, and he says, tell Bruce we failed. So then we cut over to Wayne Manor, deep down in the like sub-basement in the caves. We see Bruce Wayne Batman working on something, but also we see Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis is there. And immediately Terry's like, yeah, they died, so it's over. We lost, right? And Bruce is like, not if it never began to begin with. So Bruce reveals that he's doing time travel. He's managed to come up with a thing of time travel. He's going to go back in time. And the whole reason Brother Eye came about was because him and Mr. Terrific made Brother Eye. So he's going to go back to the point where that happened, and he's going to stop it from ever happening. And Terry's basically just here to run interference while he gets it all set up. So as he's about to do it, it's a little like bracelet thing he's wearing. He's like, yep, and don't worry, even if you die, if I succeed, this will never have happened at all. And Terry's like, that's not comforting. So at that point, the Batcave gets broken into by robot versions of Batman Incorporated. They start attacking Terry and Bruce. Bruce does a little countdown. He's like, 45 seconds to go, 30 seconds to go. And as he is counting down, his hand that does not have the bracelet on it gets cut off. And Bruce is now just down for the count. He obviously can't do anything there. Terry manages to tear through the rest of the robots just enough to give Bruce some time. And Bruce is like, hey, man. Well, I want to point out this line. Terry says, hang on, Bruce. And Bruce says, with what, Terry? So he hands over the time bracelet to Terry, and he gives him instructions saying, all right, you're going to go back. You're going to stop everything. Here's a few rules. 1, do not contact me, because not only will I not believe you, I will actively seek to stop you. And 2, don't talk to Superman either, because he always just has a way to muck things up. Don't worry about him. So the time portal opens up. Terry gets grabbed by one more of the robots, but he pulls it through with him, and he goes through successfully. And as he arrives back in the past, we see the robots taken out. He has a computer system built into the time watch, or his suit, hard to tell. That is Alfred. It is just called Alfred. And it responds to him, and it's like, hey, Alfred, where am I? And Alfred chimes in saying, uh-oh. Turns out, because of the change of person, you didn't end up in the right time. You are 5 years late to where you should be, and you're in Times Square. And Batman's like, oops. So, yeah. Future's End. Here's the thing. I don't know anything about Future's End. I know some very, very, very broad strokes about, like, the gist of where the story's going, but I don't know how we get there. I don't know how it ends. I don't know what kind of significance it has, especially because it's set 5 years in the distant future of 2019. So yeah, no, I'm at least interested to see what kind of story is going to be told here. It is a weekly, so we will come back to it over and over again for the next, I think it's 48 weeks. So enjoy that. Beyond that, it's a solid intro to it. I think it does a good job of capturing the imagination and saying, hey, look, Terry McGinnis in universe. That's never happened before. So yeah, overall, I think this one probably gets, I'll give it a 7.5. I think it's a good enough eye hook of just saying, like, all right, you're into it. You want to see what more happens. Check out the next issue next week. So yeah, I'll give it a 7.5, and I'll say I'm at least looking forward to it for now. Forever Evil Aftermath, Batman vs. Bane, #1. God, that's a mouthful. Written by Peter Tomasi, art by Scot, Eaton. So, Forever Evil Arkham War happened. I'm not going to recap all that. But we open up here after Forever Evil has concluded. We see Jim Gordon just chilling in his home, and he's polishing his gun, and he's just saying, yeah, Forever Evil ended, the lights are back on in Gotham, but Gotham's still not safe yet, because Bane still controls the town, and We got to like figure out how to deal with that. And clearly Batman's the person who needs to deal with that. So we cut over to Wayne Manor and we see Alfred sitting next to Titus. Titus starts barking at something, and then Alfred just smiles because he realizes, oh, someone's in the Batcave. Who could it be? So we see some Talons hanging on the rooftops of Gotham, just looking down at the city. There's a group that is basically acting as warlords, and they say, hey, everyone, a charity came in with like fresh water and food and rations and stuff like that for Gotham, and we hijacked it. And now we're here to sell it to the highest bidder. So here's a bottle of water. We'll start the bidding at $50. So everyone starts bidding in on that. They're all good to go. But then people, one by one, through this little group, start like disappearing and people start backing away. And the main guy's just like, what's wrong, everybody? I thought that you wanted something to drink. And we see him get lifted up by his head by Bane, who then just cracks his back over his knee, as he tends to do, and he throws him aside and says, hey, everybody, Batman used to only protect you guys during the night, but now I'm here, and I'm going to protect you day and night, so the power is yours. Take the water. Here you go. And he throws it out to the people, and basically is super happy. Like, he's just walking away, just being like, you're welcome, Gotham. So as he's walking down the street, the main Talon, William Cobb, jumps in and is just like, hey, here's the thing. The satellites are starting up. Power's coming back up around the world and whatnot. They're going to send in the army, and I don't think the Talons can beat an army. And he's like, but Talons, I've made you an army. Fight. You will be able to do it. Find your weapons and whatnot. And he's like, yeah. We took the city. We're just, we need a few more people to fight. And before they continue the conversation, a little boy comes out from a shop, and he talks to Bane. He's like, Mr. Bane, sir? And Bane sends away Cobb. And he's like, what do you want, little one? And he's like, Mr. Bane, my mommy fell, and now she can't get up, and she needs medicine. Can you help her? And Bane just walks into the building, takes a minute, walk back out, and he's like, I've killed your mother. Bury her, and never show weakness again, or else you will be hunted yourself. You're welcome. And he just leaves. So we see that the Talons are currently looking over Scarecrow, who is just being strung up from a clothesline between buildings. And they're basically talking, saying like, yeah, we may be able to fight against the army, but as long as the Court of Owls isn't saying to do anything else, we'll just follow Bane. It seems like a reasonable thing to do. So as they're doing so, Scarecrow manages to come to as he hears them scream. We see the Talons are frozen solid, and then Scarecrow starts dropping to the ground as his line is cut by batarangs. And so he's left in front of the GCPD with Scarecrow saying, he's back, he's back. So we see later that night, William Cobb is making his way to a meetup because the Talons wanted to take a vote as to whether or not they were actually going to follow Bane's orders. And as he arrives there, he's like, hey, where are my brethren? Come on, I'm ready to meet. And as he gets to this truck just busts open from the side, and out comes the Batmobile. And there's some kids inside watching it happen, and it's just like, oh man, this is better than anything on TV. So Batman freezes Cobb and says, all right, you're stuck with me for the night. Let's go. So we see Bane is inside of Wayne Tower. He's got giant vats of venom that he's infusing into his body. He disengages it, puts back on his mask, and as soon as he does so, William Cobb's frozen body just hits him in the side of the head, and immediately Bane knows who it is, and he looks out the window, and there's Batman, and he's like, hey, I don't know what the crime syndicate did to help you out, but I'm taking back my city tonight. And Bane gets indignant. He's like, how dare you? I have done more for your city. Like, you don't do anything about the, like, costume freaks. You throw them in the asylum and you think it's going to be good enough. I took them out. They are not going to be a problem anymore. And I am going to run this city as their true protector. And Batman's like, bro, you're a warlord. That's not a protector. And he's like, says you. So they start fighting, and it's kind of just a back and forth of like philosophical of what this city actually needs for like a page and a half. And then they just completely stop the subtext and just start going rah at each other over and over again. So Batman gets the drop on Bane. Bane, of course, throws everything he has at Batman, literally like picking up pieces of the street to just try to hit him with. And as the fight continues onwards, Batman lands a solid few punches using a gargoyle or an angel statue or something to bash Bane over the head with, which is enough to knock Bane out. And so Batman stands victorious. We see probably the next day, Gordon's meeting up with Bruce Wayne, and Bruce is like, I was in my panic room the whole time. I had no idea how bad the city was getting. And he says, I'll send as much money as I need to get this city back on its feet again. And Gordon lets him know what happened to Bane. He's currently being held in Arkham himself with some very heavy chains while they detox him off of his venom. And it ends with Gordon basically saying like, oh, we've got a lot of work ahead of us. And Batman says, oh, we've always had a lot of work, but that's what we do. We come back and we keep doing it until we get it right. So, yeah, that's the series. Here's the thing. As an issue on its own, it's kind of whatever, because it's just the capper. It's just like hey, here's how we get back to the status quo after Forever Evil Arkham War happened. And in that regard, on its own, it's not a great issue. Looking at it as the capper to the series, it's okay. It's better in that sense, but it still feels like something of, I don't know, like a rushed finale, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, we went through 6 issues of like, will the Arkhamites or will Bane take control of Gotham? And then we got finally like, oh, Bane did it. And then it just took one single like fight of Batman showing up and just wiping the floor with Bane. And it didn't feel like it was quite earned, but I also didn't want it to take any more time than it did. So I guess it was successful. It's hard to explain my feelings towards that. Less to say, I kind of feel like the whole Arkham War storyline is just, as I said from the beginning, how do we get another Bat book made out of Forever Evil? And this is what they came up with, and it always felt kind of unnecessary. The other ones at least tied into, here's what's going on in Forever Evil. Arkham War was just kind of and then Gotham. So I'm going to give this issue, it's going to be pretty low, honestly. 6. It's just, I don't see any reason I would pay to buy this book. I don't think it's a necessary addition to the Arkham War storyline, nor is it satisfying just on its own. So, yeah, 6. Batgirl Annual Number 2, written by Gail Simone, art by Robert Gill and Javier Garon. So, this is kind of a long-term story thing going on. We open up in Gotham City some time ago, which is to say, right before Poison Ivy betrayed the Birds of Prey. And we see that Batgirl is sitting on top of a building talking to Black Canary. Apparently, they've been tracking this group of people who are sick and have been committing like crimes and small acts of terrorism. And apparently there's a guy named Mr. Rain who is somehow behind it all. So Batgirl pulls a little stunt, jumps into the skylight of the building, and they interrupt this hostage situation going on with these guys. So as Batgirl and Black Canary are like, okay, hold on, we can talk about this. Don't shoot the hostages. And it's like, pshaw, there are 7 of us and 2 of you. And then 2 of the hostages unmasked to reveal them to be Starling and Katana. And it's like, actually, it's 5-4. And then in through a sideways corridor comes in Poison Ivy, who is just super ecstatic to be there. Like, she's so happy about everything, and she's smiling as she attacks everybody. And yeah, the Birds of Prey, during their original incarnation back in the first volume. So Batgirl comes up against one of them and just like, oh, what does Mr. Rain have on you? Why are you attacking? You're literally an accountant. What are you doing? And his eyes are all white. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, Batgirl, but like, I do whatever Mr. Rain says. So they've got some level of superhuman enhancements to the point where they're able to punch through brick walls. And so that's where Poison Ivy comes in, and she starts restraining them, taking them out. And it seems that she's a bit overzealous because she starts going after one of the hostages, and Batgirl has to hold her back and be like, no, what are you doing? That's a hostage. We don't mess with that. And Poison Ivy like realizes this. She starts apologizing, but at that point she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then one of the guys, Mr. Tucker, he's like, Poison Ivy, hey, Mr. Rain has a secret message for you. And he whispers something in Poison Ivy's ear, and all of a sudden just like the color drains out of her. And she's like, I don't know what that's about, but regardless, we did it. So a few weeks later, Poison Ivy betrayed them. That all happened in Birds of Prey. And we cut to Barbara's civilian life, where her roommate Alicia is basically inscripting her to work on a co-op garden in the middle of Gotham on top of Cherry Hill. And they've gotten this lot of land that they're going to use. And it's like, yep, we're going to build something and we're going to make it life grow here. So 3 months pass and the garden is really coming about. It's got a good amount of stuff growing, and Alicia's super happy about it. Batgirl's looking out around the surrounding city. She's like, you need to put up like a fence and security stuff, because otherwise people are going to come in here and they're going to like steal your stuff. And Alicia gets really upset about that, and she's like, stop thinking like a cop's daughter. Like, this garden is meant for whoever wants it. Like, that's the whole point of it. It is, God forbid, that we keep things away from other people in need. Jesus Christ, Barbara. And she's like, I don't even understand what I did wrong here. So we see that the whole Mr. Rain thing, they've had no leads in the meantime. The Birds of Prey are now separated from the case, and Batgirl's going at it on her own. And as she's investigating this big compound that she's got a lead on finally, Poison Ivy comes up behind her. And once again, she's in a pretty good mood, but Poison Ivy now at this point is basically telling Barbara, like, hey, I've got some news. And Barbara's like, shove it, I don't care. Like, you betrayed us. I don't intend on trusting you ever again. And Poison Ivy says, no, I'm expecting. Like, I'm pregnant. That's how she keeps saying it. And immediately Barbara's like, what did the... And you're here fighting? That's awful. Don't you care about the baby at all? And then in the biggest turn, just for the sake of why not, turns out she's not actually pregnant. She's metaphorically pregnant, like expecting a whole handful of new possibilities and blah, 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 stuff like that. So they end up breaking into the place and they restrain all the guards. Poison Ivy does some good work there. And as they make their way into the building, they find that it is full of humans inside of like body bags, and they've got scars all over them. And he's just like, Jesus, I have no idea like what even to make of this. And Poison Ivy, one of their little earlier conversations is how Batgirl pointed out to Ivy that she is still human underneath it all. But as she sees this, Poison Ivy's like, I'm not sure I want to be human if this is like what we're capable of. So 3 more months pass. Poison Ivy and Batgirl meet up again. They're at Gotham Hospital, and Poison Ivy's like, I don't even understand what we're doing here. Like, this is stupid. Everything sucks. And they both make their way into the hospital, and it turns out they're here to talk to Mr. Tucker, the same guy from before. Except now he's like on death's door. He's super dying. And Batgirl's like, hey, you're dying. Give me a deathbed confession. Tell me what's up with Mr. Rain. And Mr. Tucker explains that he, before anything happened, was diagnosed with like super cancer. He was definitely going to die. And then a person showed up representing Mr. Rain that said, hey, I can prolong your life by 6 months, as long as you sign some paperwork and like do what I say. And so he did it. And Batgirl's like, why would you, for the sake of what? And he's like, that's 6 more months with my family, with my kids. Like, yeah, of course I was going to take that. And both Batgirl and Ivy start feeling upset because they realize like, oh, both of our parents are not the type of people who would do that. Batgirl's mom and Poison Ivy's dad. And Ivy even explains that situation, just being like, yeah, my dad's like a piece of crap and he's very abusive. And I can't imagine anybody doing something that selfless like that for their kids. So Tucker explains a bit more, saying that essentially they are human organ farms. They use some drugs, they run some tests and whatnot. They give these people super strength and they use that in order to get these healthy organs into high-paying rich people, pretty much. So they realized that the bodies that they saw in the other warehouse were all previous donors who have since been sliced open and killed. Mr. Tucker takes off his shirt and shows his body is like shredding itself apart. It was never meant supposed to use that much power, so He's just falling apart on him, and he's just ready to die in peace. So Batgirl is leaving, and Poison Ivy's like, Jesus, Mr. Rain sucks, doesn't he? And she's just like, dude, what do you care? Like, you don't care about humanity at all. You care about your stupid plants, right? That's all it is. You're not even human anymore. Don't even pretend like you are. And so Batgirl just keeps on going on upon her, and they say what the point of this issue is, and that is that Poison Ivy apparently has seasonal affective disorder, which is to say, with the seasons, she goes with it because, she's like a plant. So spring and summertime were the first two arcs. Currently, they're in the fall, where she's starting to come down, and she's starting to get a lot more disaffected with everything else that's going on. And so Poison Ivy lunges at Batgirl. They get into a brief little fight, and Batgirl manages to punch her off, saying like, hey, you betrayed us. I'm still not over that. We're not partners. We're not even friends. Like, just don't come around me anymore. I swear to God, I'll put you away. And so Poison Ivy goes back into the room where Mr. Tucker is, just being like, hey, you were a good father. You deserve this at least. And she uses some spores to basically kill Tucker painlessly and quickly. So he's able to move on quickly like that. So 3 months pass, winter time's here, and we cut to Alicia's garden, and turns out somebody showed up in the middle of the night and just straight up destroyed it. Just poured gasoline in the ground so nothing would ever grow, and tore everything up. And Alicia's like, you're right, I shouldn't have trusted people. It was never going to work out. And Batgirl's like, no, that's not what I meant, but like, I'm so sorry. So she finally has one more lead on Mr. Rain, and she's making her way to his facility deep out in the woods. A guard catches her, and he's just like, oh, where you going, girlie? I'm going to have to hurt you if you want to see Mr. Rain. And she's like, you do understand I'm trained by the Bat family, right? Like, I can beat the ever-loving crap out of you without breaking a sweat. And the guard's like, fair enough, and just leaves. So at this point, she comes across Poison Ivy, who is looking like sickly and deathly ill. And she's just upset, and she's just like, oh, I'm sorry about everything. I didn't mean any of it and all that. And Batgirl sees how like sick she is, and just like, hey, it's fine, it's cool, it's whatever. But like, let's go see if we can go find Mr. Rain, all right? And Poison Ivy points out how she always admired Batgirl because she was able to show mercy. She was always able to show that restraint, and that's something Poison Ivy didn't think she was really able to do. So they find a little cabin out in the woods, and Poison Ivy's like, yeah, here he is. This is him, Mr. Rain. He's a trillionaire who just lives off the land. Like, he cares about his carbon footprint. He's off the land entirely. And he's just like, hey, Batgirl, Poison Ivy. By the way, Poison Ivy, I got a cure for your whole thing going on. If you want to, do that, we can come to an agreement. And they point out how he believes in all the same stuff that Ivy does and all that other stuff. And Batgirl just jumps in and just like, hey, yo, I've got tons of evidence on you of like all the stuff you did with human incubators and whatnot. And I'm going to take that in. Otherwise, you're going to come with me into custody. And Mr. Rain is like, that is a problem. All right, well, guess we can't have that. So he orders Poison Ivy. In order to get the cure, Poison Ivy has to attack Batgirl. And it looks like, of course, Poison Ivy's going to do it. She's on the verge of death. She's clearly not thinking straight. And as she's coming up to Batgirl, Batgirl says, Ivy? And she says, no, don't call me that. Call me Poison Ice. And she uses her wintry vine powers to summon some vines that attack Mr. Rain instead. And Rain's like, what? Why? And she explains like, hey, you suck. You're a bad person. And I don't think that people like that should be around no matter how much they, care about the environment or whatever like that. Like, there is still some room for humanity. So he starts choking him out, and Batgirl has to talk her down, saying, no, let him hit the justice system. We're not going to kill him or anything like that. And Poison Ivy's like, yeah, all right, fair enough. So she comes down, and she basically says, look, I'm sorry that I betrayed you and all that, but like, it's a cycle. I'm just going to be doing it again. Like, right now I'm fine. I won't be in the future. So consider us even right now, but then once I'm out of Arkham, it'll all start over again. And Batgirl looks sad at her and just being like, yeah, all right, that's fair. So at this point, we say, hey, look, before I take you to Arkham, I've got one last favor I need from you. And she takes Ivy over to Alicia's garden, and they regrow the whole thing even bigger than it was before. And they basically end with the monologue from the end of Dark Knight, where it's like, oh, sometimes you should have your faith rewarded. Sometimes people need to be shown that there is good in the world. So, yeah, that's the issue. I mean, I stripped down a lot of that, but it's a good message. I like the ending stuff that go on. I will say that I think the middle section, the stuff where we were dealing with the spring and summer, and then a little bit of the fall stuff, I think it was just a little bit too open-ended for me. I don't know how best to describe it besides I just think that it was relying on me making a lot of inferences on things that happened between and like what Poison Ivy's normal mindset is supposed to be. And I don't think they did a good job of establishing whether or not Batgirl sees her at any given point as supervillain or normal villain or former teammate or anti-hero. Like, they didn't establish that. So by the time we get to the point where they're fighting each other and like, is Poison Ivy going to kill Batgirl? I didn't really feel like it had been set up. But I mean, that's all the interim stuff. The message overall, I think, is the focus of the issue, and I think that is something that comes through pretty strong. So overall, I'll give this one probably just a flat 7. There are still just enough issues for me to be like, yeah. But I would say it's not... I'd say it's probably worth buying, like, if you're interested in that sort of thing, if you're into Poison Ivy, for sure, but I don't think it's something that's worth, like, definitely seeking out just to say I've read it. So yeah, 7 for that, and we'll see what happens and whatever happens next in Batgirl. Batwoman Annual Number 1, written by Marc Andreyko, art by Trevor McCarthy and Moritat. So this is a confusing one. So issue 25 marked the end of the previous writer's run, and that was W. Hayden Blackman and... I'm messing that up. Regardless, the previous author's runs, but issue 24 was the last one that wasn't a tie-in to Zero Year. And that one left off on a cliffhanger of how does this arc end? Batwoman has to fight against Batman because the DEO and Bones says that was need to happen. Meanwhile, Beth and Kate's father are trying to get Alice, aka Beth, out of DEO subjugation. So that was just left up in the air, and they said, we'll do it in the annual 6 months later. So here we are. And it is still written by Marc Andreyko, so the previous writer's original story is no longer there. And we open up basically exactly where we left off. Batwoman is fighting against Batman, and Bones is watching on from above, and Batman's like, you don't want to do this. I'm telling you, man. And she's like, oh, but I have to. So she pulls out the stop. She manages to pull down a wall on top of Batman, and that was enough for Bones to be like, yes, you did it. Cool. Unmask him. That's the whole goal here. So she goes for the mask, and then all of a sudden Batman wakes up and grabs her, holds her close, and then some explosives go off around the two of them. And somehow, because I think they're in like a boatyard or something like that, that causes Bones to start like drowning, and then... as far as I could tell, a fish hits him in the head and electrocutes him. And then he's out for the count. So, meanwhile, in the DEO headquarters, Hawkfire, which I guess is Beth's name. I swear to God, I thought it was Flamebird. But Hawkfire. She's finally made it to Beth, a.k.a. Alice. And she's just like, all right, I'm going to get you out of here. Don't do anything weird. Got it? And she's like, oh, I don't know, whatever you could mean. So they start making their way out, but they're immediately beset on all sides by guards. We see that the rest of the crew that Jacob Kane set together of like old ex-military contacts, they are sitting there outside waiting for the pair of them to get out. They manage to make their way up to the roof, and Alice and Hawkfire manage to get on. Jake is back at home. He's not out on this mission, so he's listening to it by comms. And as the helicopter starts to take off, the DEO presses some sort of button that electrifies the copter and pulls it back down to the building and knocks out all the comms. So Jacob gets his gear. His wife at the point is basically saying, hey, what are you doing? It's a suicide mission to go in there right now. You can't do that. I don't want to be a widow. And she's like, oh, I promise I'll be fine. Everything's going to be cool. I love you. And he heads off to go rescue his daughter. So back at Gotham PD, oh God, what's her name? Chase is telling Maggie and Harvey, hey, this is DEO stuff now. Stand down. We're going to have you arrested if you try to interfere. And they handcuff the pair of them and start moving them to the holding cells as Chase gets a call of something's gone horribly wrong and she needs to go deal with it. So Batwoman manages to swim back up to the surface. She gets pulled back down by Batman again. They continue fighting for a little bit. Batman says, hey, give it up. This isn't going to work for you. She throws down a flashbang thinking it'll, give her a chance to get away. But then as soon as she looks at where Batman should be, he's not. He's standing right behind her. She manages to get a cheap shot with a plank of wood and manages to knock Batman down and actually out for a while. So she's like, all right, didn't think I'd get this far. Let's see what I can do with it. So back at GCPD, Harvey Bullock fakes a heart attack in order to get the DEO guards off their guard. And once they are frantically looking for a defibrillator or someone who could do CPR, Maggie and Harvey turn the tables, knock them out, and manage to get their handcuff keys off of them. So yeah, they're ready to take down the DEO entirely as well. So out in the middle of the ocean, Chase manages to get Bones out of the sea and he's up drying. And Bones starts talking a little bit crazy, saying stuff like, oh yeah, my dad always preferred his daughters over me. And that's the whole reason I'm weird. And Chase is like, I don't know what we're even talking about here. What's up? But before they can even do anything, Asaph, Agent Asaph, who was in a bunch of issues prior, he shows up and he says, hey, I'm here on direct orders of the president. He doesn't like what you guys are doing here anymore. So if this all blows up, Bones, you're going to be going down for it. And Chase, trust me, you're going to be right there next to him. So at that point, Chase is kind of given a little bit of a quandary. She's like, oh, I'm not sure if Bones is someone I really should have been listening to all this time. So Batman wakes up. He's tied to a chair. Kate's looking over him, just being like, hey, look, I know what you're saying. I don't need to do this, but they've got my sister. I need to do this. I need to give you up to do that. And Batman's like, you do understand I'm Batman, right? We can come up with a plan better than that if we think about it for 5 minutes. And she's like, okay, are you sure? And Batman, he lays in a little bit of extra saying oh, I know your guilt for how you feel. I understand guilt. And Kate's like, all right, I'll untie you if you promise not to attack me. And Batman just stands up being like, I'm Batman. Of course I could untie myself the whole time. And she's like, all right, well, what if I didn't go along with it? And he's like, I beat the crap out of you and then I go kick Bones' ass. And Kate laughs at that and she's like, oh, wait, no, hold on, you're serious. So they start making a plan, but then Jacob Kane just walks in through the door and he's awestruck. He's like, oh my God, it's actual Batman. He's here. Hi, Batman. And Batman's like, Jacob Kane, how's it going? So at that point, Batman's like, all right, I've got an idea. 10 minutes pass and they're ready to put it into work. So Kate calls Bones and they meet up at an old iron factory. And Batman is all tied up and Kate's like, here he is, but I don't trust you anymore. You got to show me my sister. And he's like, that's funny because I don't trust you anymore because your sister was almost broken out by your cousin. Yeah, we know all about that crap. Give me Batman. And he's like, If we're renegotiating here he is. You can have him, but you at least have to show me that my sister's here. And he's like, fair enough. And he brings up the lights and we see that Alice is being hung from the ceiling by her hands, and also all the other people who were involved at the break-in at the DEO. And he's like, there, you did it. You see that she's safe. Now, I'm going to unmask Batman. And he takes off Batman's mask, and underneath is Jacob Kane. And Bones says, it can't be Dad? And immediately everybody's like, I'm sorry, what? So the rest of the Bat family immediately bust in. They start taking out DEO guards left and right. Chase is like, Batwoman, I'm sorry, Bones clearly has gone crazy. And she's like, screw you, Chase, and kicks her in the face. So Batwoman gets down Alice, and before they even have time to, like, deal with what's happening, almost all the DEO guards are just done with. Like, the Bat family's taken them out. Save for one of them who's got guns up on Hawkfire. And she's like, hey, I got this one trap. What do I do, Bones? And Bones is like, shoot her, kill her dead. And he's like, oh, but she's tied up. She's innocent. And that's when Batwoman comes in and knocks him out, manages to free Hawkfire. And then we get Bones versus Jacob Kane. He's just like, oh, I'm your only son. You need me. And Kane's like, I have no idea what in the hell you're talking about. So he gets kicked into the water. Alice comes up behind Bones. Bones has, of course, a cyanide touch. He takes off his glove and he goes and reaches for Alice, seemingly knocking her out just for now. But he says, like, hey, look, if I can't have my dad, then I'm going to take his daughter from him. So everyone's trying to get to Bones before anything can happen. Hawkfire flies in from behind, tries to get in. Bones is ready to turn around and just attack Hawkfire, but before anybody can connect with anybody, Agent Asaph shoots Bone through the head. And he's like, yeah, you went crazy. Had to be done. And Batwoman looks around for any other members of the Bat family, and they're all gone as well. She's like, oh, all right, that just kind of wrapped itself up. So we then cut to 3 weeks later. Agent Asaph is giving his entire breakdown of, like, what happened. Please explain this issue. And Asaph explains that Bones never knew his father, but his father worked with Jacob Kane back in the military. And so when Bones started digging, because he's crazy, as soon as he saw Jacob Kane's name, he just said, that must be my dad. And he's gone all in on that. And that's what this whole thing was about, was trying to get his dad back in his life. They said, all right, what happened to his daughter? They went off the grid. She's at an offshore treatment facility. They're basically just trying to make her better. Jacob Kane's saying his goodbyes to Kate, saying, hey, I got to go take care of your other daughter. You're going to be fine. You are so much more prepared than I ever thought you could be. Love you. And she says, love you back. So Bones is not dead. He is just recovering, but he is essentially a vegetable for the time being. And Chase, disillusioned with her time at the DEO under Bones, has gone into the private sector where she is now a private eye. And Agent Asaph basically puts out there saying, and if there's nobody in charge of the DEO right now, I personally think I'm a good candidate. I'd leave that before you, Congress people. So Batman meets up with Batwoman, and she thanks him for getting the family out there and doing everything there. And Batman's like, look, you're good as Batwoman. Like, you can handle yourself. I'm going to let you stay in Gotham. We're square. You can be part of the Bat family officially. So you want to join me on patrol? And she's like, hell yeah. So they go out over Gotham. And that's the issue. It wasn't awful. I want to make clear it wasn't awful. But here's the thing. Clearly it was not the intended ending. There was clearly so much here that was just kind of like, we want to, like, wrap up everything to do with that run, despite the fact that that run clearly had many more arcs in mind. So it was always going to be a rushed ending. It was always going to be something where we just get all the pieces off the chessboard and we never have to think about them again. So I can't say it was a good wrap up to that arc, but I don't think there was any way it really could be, short of the original writers giving Marc Andreyko their script and saying, here's what we were going to do. Trim out just a few things there and make it all wrapped up. So, yeah. I think I got to give this one, though, like a 6.5. Like, I just felt really confused reading it. The fact that Bones thought that Kane was his father, like, I don't know. There's stuff that comes out of nowhere, and it feels like it comes out of nowhere. So, yeah, I can't really give it a 7. That just feels a bit too high. But a 6.5, I think that's a bit more deserving. So we already are deep into Marc Andreyko's run at this point. It's gone a completely different direction. It's nice that we got some closure on that arc. Clearly we didn't have to, but it's still not as good as it could have been if we had just left good enough alone. So shame on you, DC editorial. Don't fire writers for wanting to have a gay marriage. Green Lantern New Guardians Annual Number 2, written by Justin Jordan, art by Steven Segovia, Edgar Salazar, and Jed Dougherty. So, last issue number 30 of this series, we had Kyle tapping into the Indigo Tribe to teleport away like a huge amount of people, and it's pointed out that that's more than should be physically possible for him, and the Guardians are basically like, yeah, you got something crazy going on, bro, and we're still trying to figure that out. So we open up back on Earth in New York. Kyle is telling someone to stand still as she tries to draw her, and we see that the drawing is just this gross-looking stick figure, and he's like, man, I don't know, I just can't get it. I can see it in my head, but I can't make it look right. And then we see who he's drawing, and it is like a perfect representation to the point where it is a disgusting-looking person. But it's very much obvious that it is the person taking the form of the drawing, not the other way around. So Kyle starts erasing some of the drawing, and the person starts erasing as well. And he's like, no, it's not right. I got to make this right. And he starts like glowing with a dark purple energy. So we cut over to Ferris Air, and this is apparently the first time Carol's been home in quite some time. All of her executives are dogging her, being like, oh, you need to sign this, and you can't just disappear, and blah, 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 blah. And then Carol just stops them all dead in their tracks and says, look, I hired you all to run this business even if I wasn't here. If you don't think you can do that, then there's the door. Goodbye. And she steps into her office. And at that point, her assistant is calling in, being like, Miss Ferris, I'm scheduling appointments and stuff like that around your schedule. Don't worry about that. But I do need you to sign off on this break-in for a location. There's a storage facility in Queens that got broken into. And she's like, what did you say? And immediately she's just out the window flying as Star Sapphire across the country to get over to Queens. And we see, I think what the implication is that it was Kyle's apartment, so she picks the lock and tries to break in, but then Kyle just opens the door, and Carol is shocked. She's just like, what in the hell are you doing here, Kyle? And she's just like, this is my place, that's why I'm here. And she's like, yeah, but you said you were going to be in space staying with the Guardians to look for Quaros, which, I'll be honest, again, I don't know what these individual Guardian names are, but regardless, Kyle's like, I don't know, I feel like I needed to be here right now. And as Carol looks around, she sees like the outline of a person on the wall. And she's like, all right, what is this? And so she transforms, gets her powers pulled up. And she like binds up Kyle. And Kyle's like, I'm Kyle, what do you mean? We were just on space adventures. And it's like, no. There's no way you come back to Earth and I don't feel it. And there's no way you take off your white ring. And then all of a sudden the ring just appears on Kyle's finger. And he's like, look, I got the ring right here. And she's like, no, you can't just make the ring and say you always had the ring. Nah. So who are you? Where is Kyle? So this Kyle then transforms into a negative version of the White Lantern. Like it's a black suit, but it still has the White Lantern symbol. And he's just like, look, something's wrong with you, Carol, and I'm going to fix it. And so he starts trying to go after Carol. Carol blasts him through the chest, and he's just like totally fine. He brushes it off, and he's like, it's okay, I can fix this. So then we go into space, and we meet some space sharks. And Kyle and the Guardians are fighting against the space sharks. And there's also a space squid. And the Guardians are like, yeah, no, space sharks and space squid are real. That's totally a thing. But like, they shouldn't be around here. That's kind of something weird. So there's something that's altering them. We need to figure out what that is. And Kyle's like, yeah, all right, I can do that. So they look over at this nearby planet, and it's just, yeah, it's a space station. It's been abandoned, all this stuff. And they're setting up like, here's a story of what Kyle's going to do. But before they can get into any of it actually happening, Kyle's head starts like pounding. And he's like, he gets a pink energy, like the Violet Core. And he's like, I don't know, there's something wrong with Carol. Did she ever check in with us when she got home? And Guardians are like, no, she is a bit overdue. And he's just like, I feel it, something's wrong with Carol. I got to go, I got to take care of this. And the Guardians are like, nah, man, you got to stay here. Like, well, she can handle herself. And we don't know what's going on with you. We're still trying to figure that out. So it's for the best if you stay here and deal with us. And he's like, understood. Counterpoint. And then he just teleports away using the Indigo Tribe. So he shows up on Earth, and he ends up right outside of where his dad lives, outside of Arizona. And he sees this giant weird energy bubble that's taking up like a whole town's worth of space. And he's like, all right, well, better go check that out. So he blasts it with his white ring. It recoils, hits him with his own energy, and he's like, all right, don't know what that is. But he falls in through the bubble, and he sees his dad's shop, and he's like, all right, this isn't good. And he looks down in his hand, and he starts going Marty McFly. Like, his hand just starts disappearing. To which Carol comes in, just being like, hey, Carol, what's going on? I need to know what's happening. She's like, don't worry, we can handle this. Take deep breaths. And he's like, I'm literally disappearing. I'm becoming unmade. What is going on here? And as they look around the area, we see that like everything's getting distorted and everything looks weird. And Carol's like, I'm not entirely sure myself, but like clearly whatever's happening to you is happening to the area as a whole. So you just need to stay with me. We can make you real together. And he's like, oh, it's not right. It's not right. I don't like this. So he starts fading away. And Carol realizes that she needs to ground Kyle. She needs to give him something that is real and something he can feel. So she just makes out with him, full on heavy kissing. And immediately Kyle's back to good. And they share a moment, and Kyle's like, yeah, we should probably talk about what's been going on between us. But right now, I think we got to deal with whatever this is. And she's like, yeah, totally awesome. So they look around at the buildings, and Kyle's worried about his dad, saying like, oh, is he hurt? He should be around here. And Carol just like pulls out his dad, is just like standing right next to her, and just like, oh, don't worry, she's right here. So he hugs his dad, and his dad, this is the first time seeing him in the White Lantern gear, is like, so you're not an artist anymore, I guess. And we see that Carol's basically saying, hey, he's the one who's causing problems. He's like changing some of the buildings, but not others, and he won't let us leave. And Kyle's like, I'm about to find out who he is, aren't I? And as Kyle turns around, he sees pretty much everybody that he's run into, like Guardians and the new Guardians crew and Guy Gardner and Kilowog and all that. But they're all like a little deformed. Like they had a Photoshop tool just used to stretch out their heads and faces a little bit. And behind them is the negative Kyle. And Kyle's like, okay, that's weird. I'm not happy that he looks like me, so I'm just going to charge into this. So he runs in, guns a-blazing. And the other Kyle is like, no, you stole my face. I'm the one using it. It's me. And like, all of this stuff, it's not right. It was empty. I had to be the one that fixed things because you weren't here. And Kyle's like, but it's my life. Stop trying to fill in my life with stuff. And it's pointed out that all of these things that were brought in here are big points of what Kyle has considered home throughout his life and the people that he's considered family or friends and stuff like that. So Kyle goes and talks to the negative one. He's like, look, I get it. You have a lot of power and you're not sure what to do with it, but you're giving into like these deeper urges and it's not good. You have to fight against that. It's like you can't just make something out of nothing like that. And so negative Kyle just like throws a punch. He's just like, nah, you changed the universe and ruined everything. So now I'm going to make this mine. And he blasts Kyle away. Big fight breaks out. Carol tries to help out as much as he can, throwing stuff at negative Kyle, but isn't really doing much. And we see Kyle's father steps in and he's like, hey, if you really think that you're my son, look at all the pain you're causing people and all this building's falling apart and whatnot. This isn't what my son would want. You're not my son at all. You'll never be my son. And negative Kyle's like, I am your son. God, shut up, Dad. So Kyle then blasts negative Kyle with a huge white light. Kyle's dad comes over, gives him a hug, and they see that all the people and all the stuff have been put back together successfully. Nothing's like falling apart anymore. And it's, well, at least the people. The buildings are still very unstable. So Kyle directs Carol saying, all right, get the people out of here. I'll look into the other Kyle, see what's up. And as he does so, Kyle like feels a twinge of pain. And as he looks up, he sees the other Kyle is like Venom now is the best way I could say it. He's got like a huge long tongue and he's more massive and built. So Carol starts getting all the people out of the way. Kyle runs in. Huge big fight happens where he summons like a giant version of himself in White Lantern construct. And he recognizes that as the fight continues on, Kyle is getting weaker and Reverse Kyle is getting stronger. And it's definitely like a link between the two of them. And Negative Kyle says, I have to consume you. That's the only way. I need to be whole. There's this emptiness in me that only you can fill. And Kyle makes the point saying like, okay, I get it now. this guy somehow is a representation of my own like doubts and fears and the darkness inside of me that like I've been ignoring, and somehow he came out, and that's a whole thing now. So he does a huge big blast of white energy, pretty much decimates the whole area. Carol just barely gets people out of the way. But once the light clears, we see that a giant version of the source wall has built up around this town in Arizona, and all of the faces on it are just Kyle. And Carol's like, what in the hell is this? Kyle's dad tries to run in to help, and Carol's like, no, don't touch that, man. That's bad mojo. So we see the reverse Kyle finally gets a name. His name is Oblivion, and he is the antithesis to Kyle. And then we get the backstory of what happened in the source wall after Relic was defeated. So Kyle brought all of the entities into the source wall in order to refill the reservoir of light and energy. And in doing so, he saw the life equation. He saw the source itself. And in seeing it, somehow he altered it as well. And in altering it, he made this dark mirror copy of himself and had given his own doubts and insecurities like a form, a life within themselves. So he's like, all right, if that's the case, I know there's only one way to end this. And he, as Oblivion goes to absorb Kyle once again, he just lets it happen. He just lets Oblivion go inside of him, and they both disappear into a blinding light, and everything goes away. The source wall disappears. It's all gone. And Kyle's dad turns to Carol, and he's just like, I don't understand what happened. Is he alive? Is he somewhere? And Carol tearfully says, I don't know. And that's the issue, to be continued in Green Lantern New Guardians issue 31. I gotta admit, this one is a little bit too metaphysical for me. Too like, oh, it's about feelings rather than what actually makes sense. I prefer there to be a bit more concrete behind it. Maybe we'll get that in the future issues, but this one definitely felt more like, it's just kind of a vibe, you know? Like, don't think about how it works physically too hard, because it's all fifth dimensional whatever. I mean, that's just a personal taste for me. I think Oblivion is an interesting concept, but I also don't feel like we've really been playing with the idea that Kyle's been burying down his doubts and fears for, like, enough to justify his existence. If anything, it felt like it came out more during the points where he was becoming, like, a red, orange, and yellow Lantern during his training. Like, that was the points where I think that really came up. But to say there's now just a negative Kyle running around, I'm not sure what that entails, but obviously we'll get more on it next issue. Beyond that, I think this one is probably going to be a 7.5 sounds too good, but 7 sounds too low. I think I'm going to go with the 7 though. And that's just a personal taste thing. There's nothing inherently wrong with the issue. I just really don't like the whole, oh, and I realize what I must do. And then they just don't explain it. And it all is just kind of based off feelings rather than explaining things in a logical fashion. But hey, that's what you get with a White Lantern, I guess. So yeah, 7 for this. The Flash Annual number 3, written by Robert Venditti and Van Jensen, art by Brett Booth and Ron Frenz. So, picking up directly after Flash number 30, we open up in Central City. Barry's, out in a newspaper stand talking to the guy, saying how, Central City's rebuilding pretty nicely after Forever Evil. And he sees a young teenager spray painting graffiti on a wall down in an alley. And he's like, I can't stand by that. So he goes over to the kid who is spray painting an anti-Flash logo on the wall. And he's like, seriously? Whole city's trying to recover. This is what you do. So the kid spray paints Barry across the chest and starts running. But of course, he's the Flash. So he catches up to the kid and holds him up against a chain link fence as some cops show up and just be like, hey, look, the lab geek's getting his own arrest. Ain't that crazy? So Barry points out what was done, and the cops are like, yeah, we'll take him in. We'll deal with it. So we then cut to a little bit later, and Barry is having some coffee in the precinct with Patty, and Patty is just thinking like, oh yeah, I was thinking about when I went on vacation this one time down in, I don't know, Guatemala. There was this fruit. It was delicious. I'd love to have it. And then Barry, as she walks away, gets that devious look. He's like, I can do that. So he runs down to Guatemala, grabs the fruit. But when he gets back, he takes a sip of his coffee, and all of a sudden it's cold. And he's like, that's weird. So he goes, he gives the fruit to Patty, and Patty's like, Barry, where have you been? You've been gone for like the whole morning. What's up? And Barry's like, what are you talking? I just ran down to Guatemala. Like, that's totally normal. So then Director Singh comes out, and he's angry at Barry for being missing for so long. He's like, this is your first day back in the lab after you got cleared. You better show up before work, not just on time. Got that? And Barry's like, I thought I did, but okay, sure. So he gets a file from Director Singh, and Singh says, look, we've got tons of open cases, more opening every second with the Forever Evil stuff. Here's an open and shut case. It is a murder done by a supervillain named Mogul. It's his exact MO. It was in an area where he used to go by. Go get his DNA because he's currently in jail, and because obviously he was out during Forever Evil. So go get him, and we'll totally nail him to the wall for this. So Barry goes downstairs, and he sees Iris there arguing with one of the cops. And Barry's like, hey, Iris, here for a story? And she's like, no, actually, Barry. I hate for you to think that everybody in my family is a criminal, but I'm here to pick up my nephew. Wallace R. West. And we see the young boy who was picked up earlier is Wallace West. And she calls him out just being like, Wally, why did you get arrested? I leave you alone for an hour. And Wally gives like a little look to Barry being like, hey man, nice shirt. And he's like, thanks. So Iris picks up on this. She's like, do you guys know each other? And Wally's like, no. I genuinely just like the shirt. So Wally goes and sits on a bench while Iris talks to Barry. And he's just like, look, he used to look up to his Uncle Daniel, who obviously was Reverse Flash. That went out the window. And now he blames Flash for like everything bad in his life. And Barry, I really could have him use a stronger father figure. You think maybe you could watch him and like teach him a thing or two? And Barry's like, I really don't have the time to do that. And she's like, oh, that's fine. I get it. Then we cut 20 years from now. Wallace is dead. We're standing at his gravestone. Barry is now in his blue Flash outfit. And Iris comes up in a wheelchair and just like, oh, I figured you'd be here. People only come to the graveyard at night if you're breaking in to steal something or if they feel uncontrollable guilt. And Iris basically tells him, like, it's not your fault, Flash. Like, plenty of people die all the time. You can't save everybody. I was the one who was driving the car when he died. Don't you think I wrestled with the guilt? Like, this doesn't have to be about you, And she almost gets angry at a level, just being like, what do you care about him anyway? Like, he was just some kid. What does it matter to you? And Flash takes off his cowl and shows that he's Barry. And Iris is like, oh my God, everything makes sense now. Oh, geez. And Barry's like, look, it doesn't matter. I'm going to fix things. I'm going to go back and I'm going to change it. And Iris is like, I still remember Reverse Flash, Daniel West. Don't do that. Like, if you come back, you're going to be like him. And Barry's like, I'm not coming back. So he runs off. And we cut back to current day. Barry goes in to talk to Ernest Flake, the guy who is Mogul, the supervillain that he's looking after. And he goes in with all the evidence. He's like, look, this guy died. Your thing was you were able to make snow. You had like a skiing theme to you. But you had to draw the water vapor from somewhere. And this guy was completely dehydrated. So obviously, this is you. You broke out during Forever Evil. You killed this guy. And then you started running for the border. And Ernest is like, I don't even know this guy. And no, I didn't. Like, as soon as I heard Forever Evil was happening, I just made a booking for the border because those evil Justice League people are crazy. So, yeah, my tools were always in lockup at Central City Police Department. If they were used on someone else, that's on you guys, not on me. And Barry's like, crap, that makes sense. Yeah, if they were in lockup. Okay, yeah. Well, here's the thing. I need to take a DNA swab. If you're telling the truth, then it should exonerate you and we can clear this up. And he's like, yeah, no, because clearly you're going to treat the guy who's already in prison with a fair trial. And Barry's like, Boy Scout honor. I absolutely will. I'm here for the truth, not just to get a stat boost up. So we cut back to 20 years from now. Gorilla Grodd is eating some brains and Flash shows up and he's like, Flash, You here to fight me again? We keep doing this. Look, I've got the brains of a future scientist. His name was Eobard Thawne, and now I eat it and I gain his intelligence, and now I'm even more smart. And Flash is like, look, Grodd, you've got the Speed Force in you. You've made your lair here by going through time and stealing stuff, but like, time is broken, man. Everything sucks and it's all the time, and I'm going back and I'm gonna fix things, but in order to do so, just in case I fail, just in case things can't be fixed, I'm gonna take you out. And Grodd's like, oh yeah, you're gonna like take me down again? Oh yeah, you're not gonna kill me. And he's like, nope, I'm doing it to the death. Here we go. And so Barry just immediately punches him upside the back of the head, and Grodd's like, all right, you want to do this? Let's do it. So we cut back to now. Captain Fry is in Singh's office saying, hey, I've got like 300 more open cases for you. And Singh's like, are you kidding me, man? I'm going to go down in history as the worst police director like ever. And he's like, hey, forever evil happened. Like, clearly that's going to be a little asterisk in the record books giving you a pass. Don't worry about it so much. And Fry passes Barry on the way out, and Barry's like, hey, I kind of just cracked open this case that Singh said wasn't open and shut. And he's like, oh, cool, you're going to get fired. So Barry walks in, runs through the case with Singh, and Singh is like, I'm sorry, did you just tell me that you think that now the suspect could be literally anybody? Get the hell out of my office. And so Barry is sent out, and Forrest, the detective, tells him like, yeah, you got to stand up for yourself, Barry. And Barry's like, yeah, you got to stand up. Yeah, shut up, Forrest. So he's obviously getting a little bit miffed. He goes down to talk to Patty, and Patty's like, hey, look, the director's under a lot of stress. Don't take anything he says too personally. And as she is doing some blood splatter analysis, Forrest comes by and says, hey, by the way, a robbery just came in, robbery call, we're all heading down. And so Barry gets his flash gear on and he runs down there. It's at an art gallery, and we see all the people are taking this stuff. And so when Flash gets there, they pull out some guns, and Flash is like, I'm sorry, do you not know who I am? And they say, oh, we know exactly who you are. And they fire off the guns, and it turns out that it's a ultrasonic vibrational gun, which is enough to cancel out the vibrations of Barry's body, thus making it so he can't control his powers. And Barry's like, fair enough, but even if I can't control my powers, I could still use them. And so he uses his powers to make like a giant wind turbine thing, knocks all the people down, destroys a few of their guns. The paintings that are priceless, they go scattering everywhere. Barry does the whole catching them in midair thing and piling them up. So now his hands are full. They fire off the gun again. This time it's an electric gun, and Barry just dodges out of the way. He passes off the paintings to someone else and takes away the gun, disassembling it. And he's like, there you go. Now I'll show you what the powers can really do. So he runs into the fight again. Meanwhile, back in the future, that's a strange sentence. Grodd and Flash continue to fight. And Grodd is just like, oh, you think you can beat me in my own throne room? And he's like, bro, you ain't nothing to me when I really cut loose. All right, I'm gonna fix everything, and I'm gonna make sure that you are never gonna be a problem to begin with. So Grodd manages to pin him up against the wall. Back in the past, we see Barry doing the same to one of the robbers. All the other robbers have guns trained on Barry, and he's just like, they're not going to shoot you, right? And he's just like, nah, man, they totally are. We're going for the full cause here. I do the same thing. So they unload. Barry could have easily left behind the robber to get shot, but he takes him out of the way as well and uses him to bowl over the rest of the burglars and takes them all down. And so as Barry gets them all tied up, takes them out of the room, he takes one of the guns and he's like, hey, man, this doesn't have any like fingerprints or anything I can recognize. Who gave you this weaponry? This is a bit too much for just an average burglar. And he's just like, I'm never going to tell. I ain't no rap. But I got a question for you, Flash. Why didn't you let me die? You could have easily have let me been shot. And Flash is like, even through inaction, I refuse to take a life. Not for any reason whatsoever. Cut back to the future. Barry uses a big explosive like electric blast to get Thrawn blasted across, or not Thrawn, Grodd blasted across the room. And he's basically just like, all right, look, ever since Reverse Flash did a thing, all of time and Speed Force have been broken. I'm going back to fix that, and I'm not going to let you interrupt me. So he comes up and he just starts whacking Grodd up the head over and over again at super speed. And turns out during all that, he planted a tiny little micro bomb inside of Grodd's ear. And he says, yeah, it's got a 10-second delay. But here's the funniest part, Grodd. After you being so proud of being a gorilla, the thing that's going to stop you from being able to live is the fact that your fat gorilla fingers are too fat to fit into your gorilla ears. And the bomb goes off and Grodd is decapitated. So Flash is like, all right, well, wish me luck, because if I succeed, I wouldn't have had to kill you so brutally anyway. So he runs back in time again and he says, I'm running back to kill me. So Barry's going to kill Barry. I mean, that's based off the cover of the trade, pretty damn obvious. It doesn't feel deserving of an annual. It's not a bad issue. I don't think it's a bad issue at all, but this definitely felt like just two normal issues stitched together into an annual, if that makes sense. I think that there was the part where Barry realizes the case is still open and future Barry is telling Iris that he's going back to fix things. That's where you cut off issue 1, and then everything else is issue 2. Having them as they are now, it just feels like an issue of too many parts that don't have a common theme, like moving between them. And I get maybe you want to do it for like time or something like that, but it just didn't feel like it was deserving of the annual title. Beyond that, I don't really have much to complain about. The art's not great. That's just Brett Booth. I'm not going to be able to get over that the entire time. So I'm going to give this one... Honestly, I think I'm going to give this one a 6. I'm not really fond of it. I think it was overly long for what it was, and it's just not got a lot of substance to it. We easily could have done all of the stuff that was in this issue with like half an issue at most. Barry's having time slips, and he says he ain't going to kill people. Contrast that with future Barry doing his own thing. It seems pretty easy to me. So yeah, 6 for this. Hopefully we can pick it up after this point, now that future Barry is running seemingly into the past. And, hey, introduction of Wallace West officially. So, cool. Batman Eternal number 4, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fawkes, Layman, and Seeley, art by Dustin Nguyen. So, last issue, we had a whole bunch of stuff in play. I don't think I'm going to say last issue for most of these Eternal stuff. Just check out last week's episode. This one opens up with a intercut scene of Jim Gordon going before the judge, and basically the judge saying, like, look, you are clearly responsible for 162 dead people, and you are constantly buddying up with vigilantes, so no, you are not allowed to go out on bail. And the other half that we're intercutting between is Batgirl going out and just beating the ever-loving crap out of Professor Pig's henchmen. And we see that Barbara was also in court that day as her father was being denied bail. And immediately she speaks out saying like, nah, he didn't do it. This is a miscarriage of justice. There's no way he did it. He's the best cop in Gotham. And Gordon says like, Barbara, please, just, you're not helping. Let's let the justice system do its thing. So he gets taken away. Meanwhile, as Batgirl's beating up the Professor Pig henchman, Batman comes in just being like, hey, you're nearly killing these guys. Maybe you need to back off a little bit. And so Batgirl just starts punching Batman in the face to the point where he's like, look, I get it, but like, don't do that again. So she goes off saying like, oh yeah, no, this is justice. This is the right way to deal with stuff now. These people, these henchmen don't deserve anything better than what my dad's getting. And he's starting to question his own sanity in there. So clearly he's like, we need to move quickly. Meanwhile, across the city, Stephanie Brown is on a payphone, and she calls up her mom and just like, Mom, Dad's a supervillain. I think he might be tracking my cell phone. I saw him do some stuff. They got a whole big plan thing going on. It's crazy. Can you come pick me up? And the mom's like, what? What are you talking about? And she's just goes over, she says all the stuff she saw, and her mom's like, okay, well, stay where you are. I'll be on my way. So Stephanie chills by the payphone. Meanwhile, her mom turns on the TV, which I guess is a communicator, and she calls Stephanie's father and says, hey, Cluemaster, you got a problem. So over at GCPD, Forbes is talking to Jason Bard, basically saying, all right, so you've had a very rocky first few days, but like, how's it going? What stuff is going on here? And Bard's like, well, we caught a couple of Professor Pig's henchmen, so that's a thing going on. And he's like, nice work. Yeah, good police work did that. And he's like, nah, they were already rounded up before we got there. Definitely vigilante stuff did that. And Bart started talking to Forbes saying, like, look, the Professor Pig stuff's whatever. I'm more worried about the gang war thing going on. If you could let me just make a task force to go after the gang stuff before it becomes too big of an issue. And Forbes is just like, no, we're not doing that. We're dealing with the masked people, the vigilantes and the crazy people. That's the stuff we're going after. So you focus on that. Meanwhile, or I guess sometime later, Batman is busting into Falcone's penthouse building. A bunch of guards come in and they start trying to like shoot at Batman, take him down. And one of them just starts cowering in fear before Batman. And Falcone comes in, he fires a gun in the air. He's just like, hey, what's going on around here? And one of the guards is like, it's Batman, sir. And he's just like, why didn't you show him in? Like, you idiots thought you could fight against Batman? Jesus, he's stupid. So Batman goes and talks to Falcone and says, all right, I know about your guy, Derek Grady. What is he doing in the city? And he's like, I don't remember that guy working for me at all. And he's like, I don't believe you. Well, guess you're going to have to prove that. So Falcone basically lays down the law saying, all right, look, you freaks, you've come in, you've ruined the city. I'm here to make it right again, and I've got some unfinished business. And he touches the scar on his face, obviously meaning Catwoman. And Batman's like, you already started something, and I'm going to prove it. I'm going to be after you. And Falcone's basically like, yeah, well, send my regards to Penguin, because I'm coming after him next. So Batman returns to the Batcave, and Batgirl's in there, and she is just apparently has not slept in like days. And she's using the Bat computer, and Bruce is like, hey, Barbara, you okay? And she's like, look. And she runs back the footage on the train station platform, and she manages to pick out someone who was on the platform for 3 hours and never boarded a single train. And so she runs through facial recognition and all that. And Batman is immediately like, okay, you've already kind of judged this guy as guilty. All he did was stand on a train platform. You're not looking for justice. You're looking for revenge. And she's like, I've already made up my mind here. This is going to be my guy. This is my lead I'm following. I'm going after him. So it comes back with a soap opera star from Brazil named Gonzalo Dominguez. Apparently, he's already into Interpol with suspects of like drug cartels. So Batgirl's like, all right, look, I'm going to go save my dad because clearly you're not doing anything. So then we cut over to Blackgate, where Gordon is spending his jail time. And he is introduced there by Warden Zorbatos, who I think we saw over in Forever Evil Arkham City, something like that. Arkham War, that's it. And apparently she's got a axe to grind with Gordon, because she's like, oh yeah, you discharged me from the GCPD. Allow me to show you to your cell. And the guards start leading him over to like a certain wing of the place. It's like, no. He's not going to that wing. He's going to Gen Pop. So we see Gordon's being walked through Gen Pop of Blackgate, and all these people from Detective Comics and Batman and stuff like that start calling out to Gordon saying like, hey, you put me away. I'm going to get you, Gordon. So we get like Emperor Penguin and Wrath and some other guy named Helsinger, which I don't remember, but I'm sure he was a guy. Until finally they reach the cell where Gordon's going to be staying in. And his cellmate is named Leo, who's this older guy, crazy hair, huge beard and all that. And he's like, look, here's the thing. I'd say make yourself at home, but I've seen cops at Blackgate. They don't last long. But a cop at Blackgate in Gen Pop, you're already a dead man walking. And yeah, that's where the issue leaves off. I like it. I think it's another solid one. I like Batgirl's motivation here. I think that they do a good job of walking through and saying, clearly she believes her dad. Clearly she thinks that he is not crazy and that the guy did have some sort of weapon, or at least it's a bigger conspiracy than Gordon just misfired or something like that. So I like the fact that she's willing to go all out and like really go deep on this, whereas Batman's still limited to having to protect Gotham through whatever Falcone's doing and all that other stuff. It's leading down a bigger spider web of stories that I'm looking forward to seeing how they all get told. However, I do remember when we do finally get to this this guy, the Brazilian soap opera, that is not an art style I approve of. But we'll get to that in like, I don't know, 3 months' time. As for this issue, I'm going to say this one is it's just a solid 7. I don't think it really does a whole lot to further the story. It's just kind of starting off Batgirl's thing, though I do like the Stephanie Brown stuff as well. That was in there. I do have to dock a point, though. As much as Dustin Nguyen is a great artist, after having 3 issues of Jason Fabok, it's just a step down. Like, it was always going to be. No matter who came up afterwards, it was always going to be a step down. But unfortunately, Dustin gets the brunt of that. And that's it. That's all the comics that DC Comics published this April 30th, 2014. But, of course, we are not done. It's a 5th week. Of course it's a 5th week, and anybody who has seen this show at all on 5th weeks realizes that 5th weeks are when I do the backup stories for books that have backup stories. Usually, historically, that's been things like Batman, Detective Comics, All-Star Western, stuff like big titles, you know, huge ones like that. But recently, more specifically, since the last 5th week, DC seems to have realized that people aren't buying books for the backup stories. Like, it's not something that is a major draw. So, all in all, we only had 3 backup stories published this entire month, or not even month, like 4 months since the last 5th week. I will say one of those I will not be covering. That is All-Star Western, because it was part 1 of 3. So we are going to actually get more backup stories out of that, but it's nowhere near done. So I'm just going to hold off until that one's done. But that does still leave me with 2 more backup stories I can tell you about, and those belong to Superman Wonder Woman in The Blog Read Around the World and Teen Titans in Home Sweet Home. Neither of which are important to the main story, but they're nice little fill-ins to say, hey, what was this character doing at this time? So, yeah, I don't really have anything more to say about that besides, here you go. The Blog Read Around the World, written by Charles Soule, art by Paulo Siqueira. This is the backup story to Superman Wonder Woman number 4. And it's basically, in that issue, the secret got leaked. Superman smooching on Wonder Woman was published to clarkcatropolis.org, still the stupidest name for a website of all time. And this backup story is basically just kind of detailing how are they doing in their civilian lives. So we see a party in Metropolis. Clark is meeting up with Cat Grant, who of course is the one who published the photo in the first place, and they're having a big celebration party at her boyfriend's place. And Cat's super excited to see Clark and just like, oh my god, can you believe it? We got an exclusive, and the Daily Planet, there's nothing to us now. We're able to do whatever we want. We've got tons of prestige behind us now that we broke this story. And Clark's like, that's great. That's awesome. Hey, where in the hell did you get that picture from? And she's like, I'm not going to tell you my source until you enjoy yourself at this party, Mr. Grumpy Pants. So she introduces her boyfriend, Aaron, who I guess is some sort of tech bro, and blah, blah, blah. She basically says, like, yeah, hey, we're able to do whatever we want now. Have you seen what people are saying? And Clark's like, well, what are they saying? And we get this huge, like, mosaic layout showing Superman and Wonder Woman kissing. And we get, like, Hal and Flash in the Justice League, and Hal's like, man, Superman doesn't respect the concept of dibs at all. Apollo and Eros in the Greek god pantheon are like, well, Eros is like, good for them, finding love. And Apollo's like, this is horrible. Like, don't applaud this. A few random people around the world are like, oh, wow, this is good, or this isn't good. We see Steve Trevor talking to Amanda Waller, and Waller's just like, how you doing, buddy? And he's like, I'm fine. We already knew about this. Why are you asking? He's like, yeah, well, now it's public. And it's just like, I hope Superman can handle it when she breaks up with him because she always breaks up with people. Sorry. I'm okay. So, yeah, all that's happening. And we cut back to the party, and Aaron, the tech bro, is just basically trying to pump out this thing of like, you seen the Matrix, bro? You know how Neo just learned Kung Fu immediately? We're making a machine that can let you learn like anything immediately. Languages, Kung Fu, whatever. And Clark's like, that's cool. And he's like, yeah, we have to do it because superheroes are a thing. How is humanity supposed to keep up if superheroes are a thing? And Clark kind of argues against that, saying like, I mean, maybe they're just trying to help. And he's like, I don't really have one foot in the race, whatever. I just get lost in my own world. Anyway, Clark, you're a cool dude. And Clark's like, oh, see, Kat, I'm a cool dude. Can you tell me where you got your source now, please? And she's like, gonna have to keep drinking for a while. So then we cut over to Lex Luthor in his holding detention facility. And one of the guards is like, hey, Lex, did you hear? Superman and Wonder Woman are banging. And Lex is just distraught over this. He's like, George, leave me alone. I have to think. And he just walks and starts pacing his cell, being like, of course I planned for this, but I didn't think they would actually be banging. So then we cut to Gotham, and Batman sees like a giant TV screen in Gotham Square that says like, oh yeah, Superman and Wonder Woman, it's a earth-shaking revelation, am I right? And Batwoman pulls out a few batarangs, cuts the wires to the TV, and all the people below are like, boo, you suck, Batman. So we then cut to London, where Wonder Woman's Amazonian friend Hesia, I believe, is teaching a young girls like karate class. And Wonder Woman steps in being like, hey, Hesia, do you mind if I talk to you? And she's like, yeah, totally. But first you have to give some wisdom to these kids. And Wonder Woman's like, never let anyone tell you that you can't be what you want to be. And she's like, all right, good enough. Bye, kids. So the kids all leave. And Wonder Woman's like, hey, so did you hear the news? And he's like, yeah, everyone heard the news. And she's like, cool. You want to go blow off some steam with me? And so they go somewhere and just start taking out a whole horde of robots together. And they're talking about like, oh, I thought you would be happy that this is out. No more hiding, no more secret stuff like that. And she's like, yeah, but like, I wanted it to be on our terms, not the media's. Screw that. My relationship isn't built for anybody else. So she says, look, you do what you got to do. Like, I think you should go back and visit the island again. Really like resetting or something. She's like, yeah, sounds good. So we then cut back to the party one more time, and Clark finally gets the story out of Kat. It just showed up on a random flash drive. She has no idea where it came from. And Clark's like, okay, but like, do you think that's really journalistically with integrity that we publish something that we don't even know the source of? What if it was like an enemy of Superman or Wonder Woman? What if they wanted them to suffer? You ever think of that, Kat? And Kat's like, what if they sent it to us themselves because they wanted it to be out in public? I am not bound by journalistic integrity, Clark. I publish things. That's the whole point of the website. So yeah, who knows? Besides, just relax. Like, it doesn't impact you at all. We now have a top-selling website. We can do whatever we want. Good things happen to us, Clark. And Clark's like, yeah. So that's the issue. I like it. The thing is, if the reveal has to happen in Superman Wonder Woman, which it did, I like that it didn't stop the main story pacing to do this. Like, this is taking place afterwards. Somehow, doesn't really make any sense based off the timing of where we figure out later stuff. But regardless, I think that it's good that we kept the whole General Zod story that was going on at the time, continued to move, and then this was just an extra thing in the back that can fit in wherever you need it to. You know, it's not something that's a major point of saying like, oh, immediately, while the General Zod thing was going on, Clark went and attended a party in order to find out where the source came from. I was like, no, it's just happened, and we're exploring it in a different story. So yeah, all that said, I think this one's probably, I'd say 7. You know what? I'm going to give it a 7.5 strictly for the double page spread of Batman, like, cutting the wires to the TV, and he looks so pissed off. He's just, like, so, like, God damn it, I can't believe this got out. Like, I don't know. I just love the way that... It's 2 pages that contribute nothing to the story besides Batman hates that, and I love it. So yeah, I'll give it a 7.5. It's a decent one. Definitely not worth the issue on its own, but interesting to check out if you have the issue already. Home Sweet Home, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Scott Collins. This is the backup story to Teen Titans number 30. Hey, when the last arc of Teen Titans started and everyone was teleported to the future, weren't you curious what happened to Bunker and Beast Boy? What were they up to? How did they get into shenanigans? Well, I'll tell you, despite the fact you clearly said no. We see that Bunker and Beast Boy are making their way. Apparently, Beast Boy had nowhere to go, and Bunker's like, hey, I want to head back to my hometown because my boyfriend woke up. Can you give me a lift? And Beast Boy's like, yeah, sure, why not? So he transforms into a pterodactyl and flies him back to his home village. So they land there, and Bunker's like, hey, man, just got to stop in at the church real quick, and then we'll be good to go. But before he can even make it into the church, Bunker's boyfriend shows up, Gabe. He's clearly still recovering, but he is awake. And immediately they begin hugging and kissing on each other. We see Miguel's older sister is there for the reunion as well. And just like, oh, welcome home. And Beast Boy comes up, transforms into a dog, and just being like, hey, is kissing a way that you greet each other in your culture? And she's like, no. So a few days pass and everyone's celebrating and having fun. There's a whole fiesta going on. And Beast Boy looks like a little upset. He's transformed into a snake and he's like, I mean, I'm happy for Bunker, sure. And then Bunker shows up next to him being like, hey, man, you seem upset. What's going on? And he's just like, I don't know. You're just jealous a little bit. You got a boyfriend and a family and a town that loves you. And I got nothing. And he's like, what are you talking about? My casa is tu casa. Get in here. So they join the party, and then immediately the party just explodes. Huge explosion, and a guy comes out saying, okay, you backwater peasants, my name is Brutal. I'm here to get that meta-human. And he goes over and he grabs Gabe, because I completely forgot Gabe is a meta-human. He has psychic abilities. And so he comes up and he's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to grab him. And Gabe's like, seriously? I've only been out of a coma for a week. So at that point, Bunker attacks, and he's like, hey, you may not have heard of the Teen Titans, but I'm still a card-carrying member. I'm going to take you out. So he goes in, and Brutal's like, oh, of course, one meta's dating another meta. That's stupid. So he takes Miguel's sister hostage and just like, oh, no. What am I supposed to do? He's got a knife to my sister's throat. And then Beast Boy runs in as a rhino from behind and just takes out Brutal. Wholesale knocked out. And he's like, ah, crap, I knocked him out cold. Can't ask who his employer was. And that's where Gabe steps in, and he's like, actually, my psychic abilities, I can see into his mind. So we see there's some woman somewhere, and there's like a image of a building as well. So they go and they find the building, which is like 90 miles south of them, and they just start wrecking the place. And the woman's not there, but, you know, they're having fun messing with the guards as well. And as they're messing with everything, there's a TV bulletin that basically says, Forever Evil is happening. Justice League dead. Everything's awful. And Beast Boy's like, oh, geez, Bunker, this is insane. And he's like, I know. So Bunker turns to Gabe, and Gabe's like, I know, you gotta go deal with that. Go on. That's where your true calling is. It's all right. And they hug and say like, oh, yes, but make sure you come back to me. And so Bunker and Beast Boy fly off again to, I guess, assist in the world without heroes. We never find out more about that, but I guess that's what they were doing. That's the issue. I mean, it's fine. Here's the thing. It's in the last issue of Teen Titans, so I guess if it had to be anywhere, it had to be here. But I don't feel like anyone was really wondering that. Like, it's good to give Bunker a little bit more closure, I guess, to say like, no, he actually did make it back to his boyfriend. Like, they showed a meetup, and then it gives Beast Boy a little bit more character development as well, because frankly, he was barely around in the Teen Titans book. So yeah, it's not a horrible idea, but it's just such a strange little tacked on thing, especially because it's, by all rights, a prequel that should have been put in like 6 issues earlier. It should have been at the beginning of Forever Evil, not near the end. So yeah, I don't know. A bit weird placement for it. I'm not against the concept, though, so I guess I'll give it like 6.5? 6. I'll give it a 6. No, it did have some funny moments. Some things that I actually found cute. All right, 6.5. That's the most you're getting out of me, Lobdell. Don't ask for more. So yeah, I mean, that's basically it. I have nothing more to add. I'm happy I'm done with this run of Teen Titans. And that's it. That's all the backup stories I wanted to talk about, and pretty much everything else as well. I'm just an empty vessel at this point. I have no thoughts or feelings anymore. I am completely emotionless, and the only thing that can change that is seeing you like and subscribe. And I forget that. As soon as I said it, it just felt icky. I'm a shill. Anyway, let's talk about the books that are coming out next week, because I was serious about that one part, though. I have nothing more to talk about. So, next week, we have, in no particular order, Batwing, Detective Comics, Batman/Superman, Green Lantern, Aquaman and the Others, Earth 2, Green Arrow, Justice League 3000, The Movement, Teen Titans, Phantom Stranger, Swamp Thing, and of course our 2 weeklies, Batman Eternal and Future's End. And, I think I vaguely remember about a minute and 30 seconds ago, I said something along the lines of, I'm glad I'm done with this Teen Titans run. I forgot there was an annual. I forgot we had another annual coming up. Why wouldn't they put it on 5th week? Why wouldn't they just... Scott Lobdell, you had a week assigned to just put it there. I'm sure at that point it's down to the artist, but come on, man. Beyond that, the only thing that I think is really worth noting is The Movement, because The Movement is the final issue of its series as a whole, so that's going to be wrapping up some stuff. And then I think also Green Lantern is the start of a little mini crossover called Uprising. I'll be honest, not sure what that is, but it has to do with what's going on in Green Lantern and Green Lantern Corps. So that stuff may be worth checking out if you've been interested in those series. Otherwise, pretty much a standard week. So we'll see what comes at us in that regard. Anyway, if you have any thoughts on the comics that I just listed off now, I've talked about today, or anything at all, go ahead and hit me up on the comments in YouTube down below. Or are there comments on podcasts? I think there are. I don't know how to read them, though, and I'm not going to be reading yours. So just come over to YouTube or hit us up on one of our many social media platforms. We are on Discord. We are on Reddit. We are on Patreon. We're technically on Twitter, but Jesus Christ, you're not going to be able to get me on that with any amount of money. That's not true. $5. That's my life. Yeah, $5. I'll hop back on Twitter. So yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thank you very much for watching, listening, however it is you consume this podcast. Be sure to give it a thumbs up and blah. See, no, still feels shilly. Still feels like I'm a shill. Don't like that. And always try to remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.